Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. My name is Atoosa Kasirzadeh. I'm currently an assistant professor of philosophy and software and societal systems at Carnegie Mellon University. And I also do part-time advising for Google DeepMind. My background is in applied mathematics, operations research, and philosophy of science and technology. And I've been working on the space of responsible AI broadly since 2018. These days, I work on two primary projects. One is understanding the role of fully autonomous scientist AI systems in the process of scientific discovery and scientific knowledge production. And basically, me and my colleagues are trying to understand how the systems can go wrong. We are designing some simple experiments to show that current scientist AI systems go wrong, and then we suggest some recommendations or fixes. The other project that is very dear to my heart, and I've been working on it on and off since 2-3 years ago, is the question of the narratives about the future of AI and humanity. And particular question is, what narrative should we adopt? Should we endorse? Should we kind of like believe in when we think about the future of AI and humanity? And for a very long time, in my research as a responsible AI researcher, I did not find this question interesting, but since the release of ChatGPT, I think a lot of people in the world, in the responsible AI community, started endorsing futuristic scenarios, futuristic questions, and one particular community of researchers that put forward leading narratives were AI safety community. And so I became very interested for personal reasons to understand whether the narratives they put forward is the correct narrative. If not, then what kind of narrative should we adopt? Short answer to this question is the narrative is not fully correct, and we really should revise that. So today I want to talk about a part of that engagement that I had with this question of AI safety. What is AI safety? What do we mean by AI safety community? What kinds of concerns AI safety researchers should endorse? A little bit of a personal background, just one sentence. I have a background, my bachelor's and master's is in systems engineering, systems/mechanical engineering. And as you all know, in engineering, we always learn in undergrad, first or second year, about engineering safety or system safety or technological safety. And so as a result, I always think about AI as a particular type of technology. So for me, AI safety is actually similar to technological system safety concerns that people have worked on for many years, but of course for more advanced technological systems. But when I started digging deep into questions around AI safety and obviously met with very good friends who are AI safety researchers, I figured that there is a very deep and strong connection between two concepts, AI safety and existential risks from advanced AI systems. And basically the intuition that kind of like establishes this connection is that, look, the primary role of AI safety research is to make sure that this advanced AI systems, artificial general intelligence systems, or super intelligent AI, or you can call it power-seeking AI systems, many different names in the market, they kind of like pose some existential threats to humanity. And so AI safety should prevent existential risk from AI. So this like very, sometimes implicit, sometimes very explicit connection between the project of AI safety and existential risk concerns. I'll show briefly that, yeah, as you all know, this endorsement has been prevalent for a variety of different reasons. It doesn't mean that all AI safety researchers care about existential risk. It doesn't mean that every AI safety researcher buys into this narrative, but this has been a popular narrative, very deeply connected in popular mind and psyche. And we are doing some empirical experiments to kind of prove this hypothesis that I'd be happy to share at some point when the experiments are done. But I found, I became convinced more and more that actually this framing, the close connection between AI safety and existential risk, has three significant drawbacks. One of them is that this framing could exclude researchers and practitioners who are committed to the safety of AI systems, but approach the field from very different angles. They do not, for various different reasons, connect at all AI safety to existential risk concerns. They do not have a narrative about the future of humanity and AI, or they don't like a specific narrative that is connected to super intelligent AI. But they really work on AI safety problems. So this framing then excludes those people. The second problem is that it could lead the public to mistakenly view AI safety as focused solely on existential scenarios rather than addressing a wide spectrum of safety challenges that we are dealing with. And the third problem, which I think we've seen over the past year, quite various different countries, is that this framing really risks creating resistance to safety measures among those who disagree with predictions of existential AI risk. And so, for example, you can think about various different types of venture capitalists or people who are very pro-innovation, and they just want to develop AI systems. And if we say AI safety or building of safe AI system is only connected to reducing existential risk from the systems that we are developing, and if they think that these systems don't reduce existential dangers or threats, but they bring us to utopia, I think the AI safety project is lost. So because of these three kind of concerns, we asked, and again, you've seen a variety of different kind of like explorations of AI safety, various different institutes, rebranding of AI safety to AI security, and also various different other researchers before us who came up and asked this question of like, what is AI safety? How should we think about AI safety community? Researchers like Gertrude Benju, for example, very much work at the intersection of existential risk and AI safety, but also, as you see with the AI safety report, in that report, you see that lots of the concerns are, common to anyone who cares about the responsible AI safety of these sorts of AI systems. But one thing that really also bothered me is that there were a couple of people that, like famously Emily Bender, they tried to establish a sort of a resistance to any interest in AI safety because they had a very peculiar understanding of AI safety. For example, here, Professor Bender establishes a very clear connection between the crowds of AI safety and AI ethics, and say, hey, like if you ask that you can't find common ground, it's simple. The AI safety angle wants to align AI as something that is to be raised, whereas the AI ethics crowd thinks about other kind of concerns. And as you all know, like there's been like various different connections between AI safety and effective altruism, and when the disaster.
Sorry, can I stop you 1 second? I think the slides, you're still on the first slide, so the people who are viewing from home.
Oh.
Is it possible to?
Oh, so sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
I'm so. This is very strange. I don't know why.
I can see that now. Yeah, but.
Okay.
It's okay, guys. She was on slide 4. I don't think we missed a whole lot, but it's been largely setting the framing. But now that we're getting into the weeds of it, thank you for bringing attention. And Professor, we can now see that you're on slide 5.
All right. Okay. Sorry. Okay, so can you see now if I change the slide or no? Do you see the slide change now?
Yeah, it works. It works.
Okay, great. Yeah, okay, so there's been some resistance by a particular group of people to any connection. They kind of resisted making connection to AI safety. And they kind of, again, I'm a professor, so I teach to students. I saw that this notion of AI safety is a very spicy notion. Some of my undergrad students would come and ask me, hey, should we work on AI safety? And they would connect it to various different social concerns. So My student at the University of Edinburgh, Balint Gaivnar, and myself decided to actually, instead of just like looking at what people say on Twitter, we decided to do some empirical study. We decided to look at the published research on AI safety that existed since 1990s or even a little bit earlier. Because again, we thought that our hypothesis was that, look, safety of any system has been the concerns of researchers. AI is an engineering system, therefore maybe there should be something on AI safety that engineers worked on. So we decided to conduct a systematic review of primarily peer-reviewed research on AI safety to contextualize AI safety within a broader technological and system safety practice. And we started our analysis by asking two specific questions. One was, what types of risks related to the life cycle of AI systems are addressed in AI safety research? So we wanted to say, look, is it the case that in all of the papers that people publish on AI safety, they care about existential risk, or are there other types of risks that are related, or concerns of researchers that are discussed? And the second was like, what mitigation strategies, by that we mean concrete methods, design principles, governance recommendations are proposed in recent, again, primarily peer-reviewed AI safety research. We did not include all of the non-peer review research on AI safety, and in the paper we explained why we did not that. But we picked a couple of core AI safety papers, and we ran some sampling, snowball sampling, in order to incorporate influential non-peer-reviewed research. But again, we really wanted to know from the people who are not in AI safety community, and for a long time, AI safety community has been very interested in publishing various different pieces of research in non-peer-reviewed format. So we wanted to kind of see, is there another perspective? Are there other group of people who care about AI safety, but and they really try to publish their papers, and they were like usual researchers, not necessarily coming from a particular community. So this is a summary of our findings. We actually figured that the peer-reviewed research on AI safety has included a broad spectrum of concerns throughout AI development and deployment, and the mathematical methods, computational tools, and algorithms that are developed for safe AI address fundamental challenges in current systems. So the whole vision of AI safety is about this super intelligence AI is just a flawed concept. It could be about that, and we always care about the safety of future systems, but AI safety is a notion that should be grounded and should be endorsed by everyone who cares about the development of AI. So this is the query process that we ran, and so we try to be kind of quite inclusive in the sort of like query keys that we pick. And here are some results. So we kind of like visualize our analysis in terms of here, in terms of a graph of term co-occurrences in the abstracts. And then as you see in this cloud representation, there are some very like mundane terms that are associated with the field of artificial intelligence, like reinforcement learning, artificial intelligence, support vector machines, classifiers, etc., and neural networks, attacks, deep neural networks, etc. here. So we figured out, okay, a lot of people who have published on AI safety, they've been actually working on the safety of current AI systems in relation to terminologies that are associated with systems that all of us know, and we can all make sense of every terminology that is here with maybe just a bachelor's degree or even less in any field of engineering, algorithmic systems. This risk source, the types of risks that were studied in these kinds of literature were also quite diverse, and we thought they actually map very nicely to the risk source of other technological systems that people have cared about. Like we never wanted to have undesirable behavior. For example, when we develop algorithmic systems for airlines, I work a little bit in airline industry before. Always, like, you never want the algorithmic systems to go wrong. So you don't want the system to show manifest undesirable behavior. You don't want the system to be subject to adversarial attacks. You don't want the system to misspecify a specific objective that's given to the system. And again, you know, typically we always have progress, society progresses, so systems, AI systems get more and more advanced. So for example, now systems can do interesting, complex sorts of algorithmic explorations, combinatorial explorations that they couldn't do, let's say, 10 years ago. That's totally fine. But just because an algorithmic system is new and we see more advanced behavior doesn't really mean that the safety of the previous systems wouldn't matter, or the term AI safety wouldn't apply to them. So we actually observed that none of these risk sources connect in any meaningful way to a very straightforward concept of existential risk from AI. And for every possible system that you consider, every possible system that you want to deploy in consequential decisions could be applications for a tool, educational tool for children, or could be application for airline systems, or could be a chatbot that is being used in home care, in the like old care, for old care purposes. So these are all like consequential domains, and you don't want any of these issues to arise in those considerations, right? And actually, we saw that there are a lot of, again, among the papers that we reviewed, and we have open source all of like the code and the papers as well, so you can go run the experiment yourself. We just saw that like these are the kinds of risk types for safety risks that people cared about. We can make sense of this risk source for various different mundane AI systems, reinforcement learning systems, etc. Then we kind of observed that the number of publications over time, obviously for various risk types, have changed, like the distribution, there's been distributional changes. And so we also highlighted or manifested that. And in relation to the suggestions that people are putting out, whether they're developing like algorithmic systems, or whether they're developing theoretical frameworks, or whether they're just like doing some empirical evaluations to show that some risk types arises, we saw that, look, there's been various different types of solutions that people have developed. But interestingly, a lot of the work has been like super engineering work, because people try to develop a lot of like algorithms, and even in the theoretical framework, people really try to develop algorithms. So again, if you put your engineering hat on for a second, you can see that, well, AI safety research should be seen as a continuation of engineering safety, technical safety, system safety. And that's, that kind of a sentiment, it is being endorsed more and more in the AI safety community. But let's say in 2020, that was not a leading sentiment of the AI safety community. Now, various different types of, again, research has been done, and we saw that, well, again, in this literature, in this pile of papers that we analyze, people develop algorithms, people run simulation studies, people develop design frameworks, people work on explainability, interpretability. Obviously, very important philosophical questions people are working on, and again, lots of the work is like very theoretical. Okay, and so again, the upshot for us from this this perspective piece was that, look, AI safety should not be a terminology that divides responsible AI researchers, because everyone who cares about responsible AI development, who cares about AI for good, various different labels you can pick, needs to think about the safety of AI systems. So safety of AI systems should be like intrinsic to the way we think about the design and development of AI systems. And Obviously, some of us who like to think about the future of AI systems and want to speculate or want to write various different scenarios and want to think about those specific types of questions, they have to do it. It's very important to have people who are visionary, think about future, and try to really steer these systems towards a future that cares about the well-being and welfare of humans. But we should not tie AI safety to existential risk, and we should really interpret this term in a way that makes sense for everyone and everyone cares about. And so the title of the paper is AI Safety for Everyone. Now, various different open questions like exist here. One is that, in the literature, a lot of people talk about socio-technical AI safety. What does it mean? It's not really clear. We are doing a literature review on this, and people just like put out this word in order to suggest that we care about AI safety, not in a particular existential risky way about AI safety. But I think AI safety process is always socio-technical, right? Like if you go to the roots of the term socio-technical terminology always wants to say, whenever you think about the deployment of systems in society, technical system in society, and you want to evaluate how these technical systems are changing society, how should we design the systems such that they bring about better social conditions, you are in the realm of socio-technical. So distinction between technical, socio-technical is not fully correct in my view when we talk about deployment of AI systems and care about the safety of them. We are in the realm of socio-technical, but that's an open question. The other open question, limitation of our work, and we wrote one page about the limitations of our studies, is that we just focus on the peer-reviewed literature primarily, but we should also consider non-peer review sources. And at the moment, with the same co-author, we are actually comparing various different topics that AI ethics researchers studied and various different topics that AI safety researchers studied, and we are trying to find the commonalities and differences. Again, in the whole motivation for this project is that I think all of the people who work on AI safety, ethics, responsible AI, we have the same project, and just a particular interpretation of a term should not make people divided in this space. Yes, and then again, our empirical analysis is just like a first step in understanding the very complex practice of AI safety. We have not exactly figured out, and we have not asked the question here of what AI safety community is doing. We have not made any connection between various different ideological groups like long-termist, effective altruists, rationalists to AI safety. Those are very important sociological questions, and one really interesting sociologist, Shahzadeh Ahmad, she is running a lot of interesting sociological studies on that front. We asked the question of what AI safety researchers have been doing, and our answer is that they've been doing system safety work, technical safety work for AI systems, and AI system is a technology continuous to the other technological systems that we have. And I think with that in mind, I'm going to stop and looking forward to hearing your questions and comments and criticisms.
Super cool, Professor. I really appreciate you taking the time to go through your perspective. Sorry, I'm in the backyard. My puppy is refusing to stay inside. But why don't Alif and I get started with some of the prepared questions, and we can release this to the group. So I guess my first question would be, I'm curious about how your current work overlaps with your role on the World Economic Forum's Council, and what kinds of, I guess, unexpected collaborations you think may surface from that. I believe you hold the seat for the next 2 years.
Yeah, so the World Economic Forum has various different working groups, and I think over like 20 different working groups, and each working group is focused on exploring a specific topic that is of urgency to the world. And so, for example, they look at climate change, they look at sustainable development, they look at quantum physics, quantum cryptography, blockchain technology, all of that. And one of those working groups is a working group on artificial general intelligence. And each of the working groups develop their own agenda, like they set their own goal, what they want to achieve. Do they want to, for example, issue a statement? Do they want to write a report? And our working group is focused on, as I said, the title is Artificial General Intelligence, but we are trying to think about the risk of harm from artificial general intelligence. And I think in the next couple of weeks, we have like a short statement that we are going to share. What I found very interesting, again, and I think this is like a super interesting and challenging space to work at, both in a World Economic Forum, but also out of that, is that there are a lot of, again, as I said, like terminologies that sometimes divides us for very unnecessary reasons. And I don't know why we did not ask these questions much earlier, like why we didn't ask what are the shared goals that different groups of responsible AI researchers have, and why we should not allow words like super intelligent AI or AGI really divide us. And again, that's a sociological question of how much that divide really is. But again, in the educational space, I have had so many undergraduate students that receive the conception of artificial general intelligence, super intelligence, alignment, AI safety, existential risk from Twitter or from some blog posts. And I think some of those views are very like super simplistic, and I think kind of sometimes misguided. And again, when we think about the next generations, we are training the next generations, and this next generations are going to most probably deal with problems that maybe are harder than the problems that our generations are dealing with. So they need to develop a very deep understanding of AI systems and how they're going to impact society. So yeah, I guess my goal with World Economic Forum, but also personally, is really trying to provide a more, I guess, enriching environment, a more critical space for thinking about all of these problems. People shouldn't really escape from groups that endorse these terminologies, and people who endorse these terminologies like existential risk, etc., shouldn't just claim their conception of or interpretation of those terminologies and attach that to these terminologies. Like, I've seen some AI safety researchers who just do not like this paper that I put out. They don't think AI safety, they don't think we should expand the conception of AI safety to safety engineering practices, and we should keep AI safety to be a project about super intelligent control. And as an engineer, I just think that is just a wrong, biased view. And so we need to have conversations to, you know, like settle on a stable point where everyone's happy.
Yeah, totally. I'm not much of an ideologue, so I'm not trying to render a value judgment here necessarily, but I have heard people describe EA, effective altruism, as the secular religion of the academic elite. So I think it's interesting how this belief system has started to bleed into academia, and you know, I'm glad that there's, you know, kind of a discussion happening about the extent to which that's appropriate. And you know, thank you for being on the forefront of that. You know, you kind of touched on this tangentially, but I would love to hear about your early journey before, you know, before the fancy AI stuff, before becoming a philosopher. How did your early experiences in supply chain lend you to having a unique perspective here?
Yeah, I've had a very zigzag background, I guess, like maybe lots of other people in the space, but I started as an engineer, and I did a PhD in operations research in Montreal, in École Polytechnique of Montreal, and I was working on developing algorithmic systems for airline crew scheduling problem, like very mundane. Like the question was like, if we want to develop monthly schedules for pilots and co-pilots, and we want the company to minimize the cost of monthly schedules, but also maximize the preferences of pilots and co-pilots over the flight choices. How should we solve this optimization problem? So we developed some mathematical models and some algorithms for resolving those models. But then a lot of the algorithms that we were developing basically would produce not necessarily optimal solutions, but heuristic solutions. And I was not really happy with this, but it seems like this is the best we could do. And we were collaborating with a company that collaborated with Air Canada. So we really were trying to address these problems like super practically. And then I think I started asking the question of like, well, if we randomly choose these algorithmic systems, or we find heuristic solutions which are not the best, but we just think that they're the best we can do, and then we put them out, they kind of shape the world. In this case, they shape the flights, the flight routes of pilots, co-pilots. Again, in this context, it's very mundane, not important. But what if we use these algorithmic systems to make decisions about healthcare, about risk assessments, and different kind of contexts like loan allocation, etc. And so then I really became interested in understanding the societal impacts like of algorithmic systems, how algorithmic systems impact society. And originally my question was super philosophical, and the question was like, oh, we have this mathematical computational systems, and how do they get materialized? And like really purely philosophical. I didn't have a theory of impact, or I didn't want to work on ethics of AI, but in this context, one of the questions that arose when I started, I started then doing a second PhD in philosophy, and I do not recommend that, but I tell you why I did that. Because I did not have any background in humanities. I never studied humanities, and so I didn't know really how to write properly like these types of like non-technical papers. And I was an international student in Canada, so the only way that I could get funding and also do studies was to do a second PhD, because in Canada, again, most of the PhDs, as you know, are like North America in general. You do 2 years of coursework, and then you write a dissertation. So my plan was to do the coursework, and then if I don't like it, I can just quit and just go work with my previous background. But throughout the whole process, I just figured how philosophy, and in particular philosophy of science and technology, which was my area of specialization, can really help us to think about all of these critical questions about social impacts of technology. And honestly, like, people ask questions about social impacts of technology. AI researchers ask questions. I mean, you know probably about Weizenbaum, and you know about Norbert Wiener, and all of these super pioneering AI researchers. At some point in their lives, they really took these questions, societal impacts of technology, impacts of this technology on human conditions, super seriously. And so,
if I may interrupt for a second, would you mind typing those names of foundational researchers in the chat, just so that other people can follow them up or look up them?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and you know, as a U.S. citizen, sorry about the tariffs. You know, good stuff, Canada, for working on taking AI safety pretty seriously and actually productionizing it. Hope you guys get your GPUs. So I have one final question, and then we'll open it up to the audience. So if you hadn't done a second PhD, you suddenly turned 18 years old. You were interested in these problems, but you also have to navigate the economic realities. What would you recommend to I guess budding engineers or budding humanities students who have a passing interest in AI safety and don't necessarily know if it's a career for them?
Yeah, this is such a great question. I think like, this is my suggestion. I think it is really important to care about the risk of harm from AI system, right? Like, it's so important. We all have to understand that. We all have to really try to minimize the risk of harms. But sometimes I think this whole conversation around risk really cripple people to think about the positive impacts they can have in the real world. And I don't need to convince you about how important is it for all of us to make positive impacts in this real world. The world we are living in is not like the most, it's not in its happiest and the most hopeful place. And I think the the younger generation can always bring about more success, more hope, more happiness. In the context of AI and societal impacts of AI, I think there are two things that they can do. One is to really understand how their research on AI safety can improve the safety of the current systems that are being deployed. Not necessarily the current systems that are being deployed, what kind of best practices should be developed, what kind of problems should we really resolve with the AI systems that are being deployed here and now, or will be deployed. We see that they will be deployed in the next 2-3 years. But just getting a more grounded understanding of safety of AI systems in the world that we all experience, and be super excited about the future impacts of AI systems. I actually think every student needs to have a narrative about the future of AI. That's why I'm writing the book. I'm not saying at all we have to ignore those questions, but we should also not forget that we are embodied humans that are living here and now in this world, and we really should leverage that and benefit from that. The second way I think that AI safety researchers can really contribute is that, there are all interesting ways in which the safety of AI systems can help communities, can help groups of people to resolve resource allocation problems in the best possible way. Like, I've been looking at this super unbelievably sad statistics, and I don't want to look sad here, but I think this is a question that we all need to grapple with, about the number of people in the whole world that are dying because of starvation, like in the whole world. And that number is like super high. And the one question that I ask is like, and then we all waste so much food as well. So there are like really worrying concerns about the amount of food that is being wasted. And this is a very simple, I think, very simple resource allocation problem. We are not allocating our resources in the most optimal way from one side to another side, and why we are not really developing better algorithmic systems in a safe way that can resolve these kinds of problems. And I think these are like very important problems, simple problems, maybe not too simple, but problems that we can resolve. And so just being a little bit more hopeful, a little bit more grounded, and looking for making real impact, I think that is what I would definitely suggest to all the young researchers.
Yeah, I think that's a very compelling and also like grounded problem and response to that. It's bizarre how many billions are getting thrown at GPT wrappers, and yet there's no food in Sudan. That's very much a solvable problem, and yet there's very little will to do so. And my personal work, that won't be blabbing too much. My company crowdsources medical bills in the U.S. to build up a price transparency database, accelerating just the collection of that using modern vision language models and OCR, and having agents actually negotiate those bills. So, a resource allocation problem in a different space. And, it's interesting how my customers don't really give, two damns about AI or what the actual stack looks like behind the scenes. Yet, I have to kind of think about these questions as I continue to build. But okay, so let's open it up to the chat. Folks, feel free to just kind of, go on voice. We don't. And, it would be nice if you raise your hands. Okay, Ian, why don't you go first?
Hi, everybody. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Bingo.
Great. Awesome. Thank you very much, Professor, for the talk. It was extremely insightful. I think I'll preface my questions by saying that I've been kind of far away from the AI safety space, so maybe some of my ideas might be a little bit outdated. But I think my first question about your paper, from what I remember, like most of the existential risk folks tend to publish things in like blogs like Less Wrong or stuff. So I guess my first question would be, maybe is there a chance that the conclusions that like not all peer-reviewed studies are related to existential risk? Might that be because like all the existential risk folks are actually more in non-peer-reviewed spaces and publishing on Less Wrong or maybe EA forums or something like that? And I guess my second question is more to the side of like, what are your opinions about researchers in the existential risk field? Because I remember, like, from when I was engaging with the community, I had a feeling that like the methodological approach wasn't really principled. Like, many people created narratives with forecasting, and like, I guess the methodology with the forecasting that they did wasn't really solid in my view. So I guess a very general question about your opinion on that side of research. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Jan. Two excellent questions. So in relation to your first question, I totally agree with you. I think the point of the paper was to show that there is this other perspective about AI safety that we are not talking about that. And it was not that we did not claim that we should just endorse this perspective, and we did not claim that this is the correct, normatively correct perspective. But what we observed was that there is a group of researchers, there's a community of researchers, maybe they don't have like a shared epistemic community, they don't go together to specific venues, they don't share same sort of ideologies, etc. But they're writing about AI safety, they publish AI safety in peer-reviewed journals, and they care about the safety of current systems. And as a result, that's a conception of AI safety that we should also endorse. And so then when we say AI safety for everyone, it means it should be for people who care about existential risk of superintelligent systems, but also it should be a project for everyone else who cares about the safety of technological systems. So like, really good question. Second question is very hard, right? I don't know how to answer. I think I'm also not, I'm personally also really in the process of understanding the value of forecasting. Like, I think for some specific project and for some specific concerns, forecasting is great. I think for some types of reasoning, you know, Bayesian epistemology and decision making and probabilistic reasoning is great, but I'm not really convinced that we should apply that special mode of reasoning for all sorts of speculations about all sorts of problems. So this is my understanding. I could be wrong, but at this moment in time, my understanding is that in the AI safety community, there are two different methods or approaches for thinking about the futuristic scenarios. One is very much rooted in the forecasting scenario. So people try to do everything in order to design scenarios and then put out those as forecasts. And so AI 2027 is one example of that kind of a forecasting exploration. But another methodology that I am more interested in is like a foresighting process. And with the foresighting process, you are more interested in understanding the process. You are more interested in understanding the complexity of the whole process rather than just setting out some scenarios and like betting on those scenarios. I think, you know, like a majority of the community seems, I don't know majority, but some people in that community are very much sold into the idea of like forecasting. And I don't know if you know about the super forecasting book that was published a couple of years ago. So that's a very interesting book to read, because in that book, actually the author of that book is a very good statistician. And so he has done work with a lot of intelligence communities, intelligence entities like CIA, FBI in the United States. And the original goal of this statistician was to show that if we reason properly about a lot of things, we can, you know, in the realm of politics, in the realm of economics, if we try to quantify stuff and think probabilistically, we can actually predict things better. And prediction is a very important activity that these intelligence agencies should do. Though that person did not claim that for every single mode of reasoning or future question we have to apply like super forecasting. But that book gave rise to prediction markets and like super forecasting practices and etc. So yeah, if you want to read more about that and see what you like or don't like about this forecasting procedure, I would recommend starting from the super forecasting book.
It's interesting you mentioned AI 2027, because we actually hosted them, like I think 2 months back. They actually interviewed me as one of the, I guess, healthcare people. I wasn't important enough to be named, I guess, but they did talk to a lot of people. I would recommend to any students in the audience, look up political economy. It's not exactly economics. It's it also includes kind of game theory, psychology. Some of the foundational people are like Adam Smith, Thomas Malthus, but we don't live in a free market, right? Like there are laws, there are biases that shape the outcomes that are not grounded in just rationality, right? Like there's no good reason for Elon to be burning millions on Grok. He just thinks it's fun, right? But anyway, yeah, I think the lack of overlap between people who are in industry who wield billions of dollars on AI budgets, but have a kind of fundamental gap in how they think about that is really compelling. Are there any more questions? I don't think I saw hands in the chat. Cool. Morteza, you want to go?
Thank you so much, Professor, for your great insightful talk. I have a quick question. I have a general question, actually. You've touched on two important directions within your talk. The first one is the types of risks that we want to tackle, and the second one is the mitigation strategies, But I think we've missed an intermediate step here, which is to identify the risks. As you know, the AI systems are getting more and more complex these days, and some of them are not very interpretable. And I have this primary question: how we want to identify risks, and we want to make sure that, for example, we have identified all the potential risks within our AI systems.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Morteza, for this important question. Very, very interesting and very important. So a couple of things to say. First of all, I think people always have been trying to think about taxonomies of risk of harm for various different AI systems. And in the context of general purpose AI systems, generative AI, since 2021, 2020 even, there's been lots of different efforts where interdisciplinary groups of people, like 20 people, came together. Some of them were developing the system, some of them were studying the social impacts of the system. They all came together and wanted to develop a mental model of the types of risk of harm that these systems can pose. And then they wanted to use this taxonomy in order to so the identification process that you very correctly mentioned, I didn't talk about, has been done for a very long time through different methodologies. I think the most famously one methodology is taxonomization. So I can share with you one paper that I was a part of writing with 20 other people. And we try to understand the risk of harm from language model. And as you will see, I think the report is super long, and then we identify over 20 different categories of risks. We think that these categories of risk are kind of comprehensive, so they capture a variety of different ways in a high level that a system can harm environment, can harm individuals psychologically or physically, can harm social systems, can harm economy, politics, democracy, can harm information ecosystem, etc. And so yeah, the process of identification is, as you say, super important, because if we don't identify all the important categories, we won't be able to claim that we have enough or we don't have enough mitigation strategies. But yeah, I think if you look at the taxonomies of the risk of harms, then you can see that there are various different efforts on this. So the paper I shared with you is one which looks at risk of harm from current AI system, from current language models. And this was published in 2021. So before even we got exposure to ChatGPT, but at that time I was an intern at Google DeepMind. And so obviously the company was developing the systems, and some of the responsible AI researchers said that, okay, we really have to develop a mapping of a comprehensive mapping of this risk of harm. But then there are other types of risks, right? So as we mentioned, for example, there's a risk of harm, like existential risk of harm from superintelligence systems. And I can link to this other paper where I think if you read this paper that I just shared, you get also more of a background information about why existential risk has been endorsed for some particular researchers and not by other researchers, and why it is important to kind of like boil down that notion and analyze that in various different ways.
Thank you so much. Actually, I want to know whether we can say we have recognized all aspects of these AI systems, for example, or not. We can be in such position in the near future or not.
Yeah, great question, Mortaza. But also never forget that these systems, I think a big part of our connection and relation to these systems is happening through social experimentation. So, for example, we did not know that these systems or some of these chatbots can push some people to, or can target some psychosis conditions in some humans, right? We didn't know that. But then some people use these systems for very long, and then empirically we observe that these systems can actually target or maybe cause psychosis in some humans, and like in any kind of age or gender. And so then people, through this very specific observation, started talking about the risk of harm being associated with specific chatbots. Some people call those chatbots psychosis chatbots. Like New York Times did a very good kind of coverage of some of these exposures, people to the psychosis chatbots. And in Reddit, actually, there are some really interesting, very horrifying community conversations where you see that actually a lot of people are having like psychologically negative like impacts, getting exposed to psychologically negative impact from the systems. So one way to identify this risk of harms, as you're suggesting, is also to check and see how dynamically the systems impose harms or risk, and then you would add that to the category. So there's no fixed category that envisions all risk of harms, but I think in the risk management, risk governance space, we have a very good basis, and then that basis needs to get updated by more empirical observations, etc.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Professor.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, we are kind of running out of time. So, Professor Kasirzadeh, thank you so much for being here. Are there any parting thoughts that you want to leave this audience with before we wrap?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and thanks for all the great questions. Yeah, just I would say be concerned, and I think one of the most important characteristics that we all need to embody, or our generation needs to embody these days, is that there are lots of concerns, there are lots of risk of harms, but we shouldn't allow those fearful concerns really cripple us. And like, we need to learn to accept that the generation of our current generation needs to develop a lot of resilience and resistance. We need to understand that those risks exist, but then we should also think about all positive ways in which we can have causal impacts on the areas that we care about. And as Abrar said, for example, with his company, he is doing lots of positive things, and I think there are infinite ways in which we can develop new ways of bringing about positive impacts.
Job's not finished, as Kobe Bryant once said. Please follow Dr. Atoosa on her Twitter, because, again, this conversation is going to keep going on. Professor Kasirzadeh, thank you so much for being here. Would love to keep the channel open, and if you ever want to come back, or just like
absolutely,
just riff, my door is open. You have my email. You have the Cohere team backing you. So again, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. This was definitely one of our more dense but notable talks. I think we've had plenty of PhD students come in talking about their research, but this was a little broad today. But I think we did a good job. Anyway. Have a good rest of your days, weeks.
Thanks so much, everyone. Take care.
Take care.